Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your monkey today. I'm going to be talking about some terminology in the cannabis and horticulture workplace. If you're starting up, looking for a job even, it's good to know the terminology, and it can be very complicated, confusing. I'm going to start with the most complicated one, and that's going to be what's a grower. Now, I feel like I'd have a hard time telling somebody who's never worked in agriculture the differences. So I guess people would really get this idea of, your street grower grows, in their closet. And on the other hand, a PhD, maverick, professional, all suited up. And the truth is, it's even more blurred than that, looking in and from inside perspective of the industry. I had no idea how I would lay that out for you guys, but I thought it was important if you're looking into a career to know how far you go and how the qualifications are. So I just typed in the search, and fortunately it started coming together and I started finding job listings. But before I start going through that with you guys, I'm gonna lay down some general guidelines. Alrighty, first, here's a generalization of compartmentalization for anybody who's never really heard of it. Now, it manifests in business as departmentalization and cabinetization. But also, I always find it interesting how these business terms and strategies always come up in psychology as coping mechanisms, as trauma responses. So where I'm going with this is, in the marijuana industry, the licensing between growing and selling is kind of built like a chain. So you've got dispensaries who have to be licensed to sell weed, and then they have to extend a license to a grow operation to run under them to grow and provide pot for them. Now, obviously, each dispensary can't just sell their own weed. Either they're too far away or they need to make money from other brands and other dispensaries in the state. They can grow their own in-house, but in places where it is hard to grow in the area where the dispensary is, they can outsource. Any other grow ops in this state can sell in bulk to them and back and forth, and labs and such, and, other third-party cells. So this makes a grow op only as strong as its dispensary, not its weed. But don't fret. If you're looking for a career, there's still a lot to learn, and maybe you'll get lucky in the waves and the change. And on the positive note, with all those jobs out there, what are they? Where are they? I mean, there's so many questions. How do you find them? Well, let's get into that. After some dedicated, valiant research, I've found what the mainstream deems to be the most common types of job in the industry. They say trimmer's a starter, and then they have cultivators, an edible chef, and delivery. Trust me, there's way more to all of this than they even want to make this seem. Out here in Arizona, at least, since we have the dispensaries you can work at and all those jobs, let's take a look more into what you'll find at grow ops. And in a grow op, you want to learn as much as you can about the journey of the plant through the life cycle at your particular location. It can take a while to even get into cultivation. There are many levels, and taking care of plants can be very critical and fickle sometimes. A lot of people get stuck doing just labor work, cleaning up before and after plants, or even just moving them around, or behind the scenes doing maintenance on the facility or basic cleanup. Sometimes all these jobs can be combined too and have different tech levels. There can be people who manage pests and sprays and chemicals and fermentation, chemigation, people who inspect the environment, the plants, and the grow medium for pests and issues. A lot of levels. And so here we enter the more compartmentalization part, everything after harvest. So we get to a point where a lot of companies can produce way more flower than they can handle, and process and dry down and trim and package in a reasonable amount of time. So here's what you become in trim and post-harvest. This is all the manual labor. You could use these scissors a lot to trim up weed and separate it from the stems and look for issues and sort it all out. These are going to be your best friends. And here are the machines that people are rerunning and putting weed through, wet or dry. Some companies will have small or huge versions of this. There are some versions that are as big as a room, take up the whole room. Imagine cleaning that. Based on the size of these things can process up to 5,000 pounds of material an hour. It's basically a tumbler for weed. As you can see here, there's varying sizes. Imagine taking apart, disassembling, and cleaning all those blades between each strain and reassembling it in the same shift. The shifts can be really, really long. And there's always going to be overtime in processing. There's never going to be part-time. It's always full-time and sometimes mandatory overtime. And everything is just basically a version of putting your weed through your fan or your HVAC unit. And then there's packaging, where a lot of the times all of the QA falls down to. And sometimes processing can just, ruin weed for people. Alrighty, now that we've got you all excited for your first new job experience, I know I was for mine. They saw overnights on my resume and immediately put me on overnights for sanitation. If you find the right place, the right people, and the right mindset, you can go far. Who knows when it finally gets federally decriminalized, what grow ops and what distributor chains are still gonna be open or needed once everything's all said and done. So get your experience in and try to find a place that values it. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you some job listings across the board for trimming, and I'm going to start with a lower end tier and work my way up to a higher tier. Keep in mind, trimming can be done at different times of curing, processing, and even the dispensaries can do trimming. So here we have a trimmer position in Hawaii at $12 an hour, Monday through Friday, 4+ hours, urgently hiring. If the living cost isn't too bad, I would totally do this. And on the other side, we have a medical marijuana trimmer in Colorado that does $14 to $14.50 Monday through Friday, 5+ hours, full time. So here's two other similar pay rates. You got some post-harvest trimmers in Missouri, going from $25K to $32K at full time. And then we have a trim technician 1, an MA, going from $29 to $37K a year at 10-hour shifts. Sorry. Those can be long shifts and way over full time. So that's the scope of the lower tier. We're going to go into a more medium one here, and there's not a whole lot of range here in trim, I'll have you know, but a lot of the times with all this overtime, you could be making a lot more money than upper management and team leads if you're willing to just, lose so much sleep, almost be on call. So here's the medium tier right here. We're going to find cannabis trimmers going at $15 an hour, full-time Monday through Friday, 3+ hours. And then, my favorite grow op, Grow Sciences. Their stuff is like some of the best, and it goes $35K to $39K a year, which is pretty good. Full time, probably tons of benefits. I mean, this stuff is great, but it's hard to find up here. And to be honest, Phoenix and its proximity is the last place I want to live in Arizona. Okay, and so there's the medium. Here's the higher tiers. Right here, we got trim technician in Colorado, $18 an hour, probably full-time. It's 2.8 on the rating. Let's see, and then another production tech trimmer, good chemistry, 2.8, same rating. Denver, Colorado, $17.50 to $20 an hour. See, there's where I'd want to be, but I'm not moving to Colorado either. I got my home, and as long as it works out, I'm staying here. But there's opportunities out there. That's what I'm saying. So you can rake in overtime and trimming, but also be careful of being allergic to certain strains, and the terpenes in them can really cause a handful for your breathing problems. So always be aware of that too. There's tons of different breathing issues that can come up when you work in trim. Now, I could go on, but I've got to move on. So, let's see. After that, I'm going to go into post-harvest, which is basically a fancy line for no longer the cultivist or grower's problem. Because of course, experienced people know that you can grow the best bud ever, but ruin it completely after you harvest it before it's done curing or smokable. So here we have a post-harvest specialist in Hawaii, again, making 15 to 16 full-time Monday through Friday, 2+ hours. And we've got a harvest team lead in West Virginia, 30K to 38K, full-time, weekend availability +2. And stepping up a scale again, we have Harvest Tech in Colorado, 1750 to 1850, full-time weekend availability. And closer to home, Cure Leaf in Phoenix, Arizona. Let's see, it's 33K to 42K. Get ever easy. So again, there's a lot in processing and curing weed. You have to know a lot, and that's why a post-harvest manager covering all of that would make a lot. And I learned everything to do in post-harvest and QA, following it from drying to packaging, testing, all of that. I would be a total fit for this, but I'm not going to PA. I will not deal with the cold. And moving right along at a nice pace, we're coming into your cultivars. Anybody being a cultivator, that can be like I said, working with plants or just doing maintenance around and for the plants. Believe me, it could be a broad term, and a lot of places sometimes they broaden their terms to just make you do everything because they're so shorthanded. You'll be cultivating, processing, lab, all of that, like there's no tomorrow. Just like there's no tomorrow, you'll always be working because plants may sleep, but just like the government, they don't stop growing on the weekends. So we've got a cultivation tech from North Dakota making $15 an hour full-time, 8-hour shift. How quaint. Now moving up a level, we have outdoor cannabis cultivation support and flower techs. Missouri making $16 an hour with weekend availability, and some in Florida 15 to 16 full-time. Alrighty. Well, that's stepping up. That might be sprays and all kinds of other cool fun stuff. And let's move on up to our final tier of cultivator. We've got cannabis cultivation assistant in Montana, 17 to 19 an hour, full-time, day shifts, +6 hours. I guess that's what that means. And cultivation harvest agents in Florida, again, making full-time. Ooh, at a 36 to 46K a year. That must be where my best boss quality assurance went. Peace out, Nate. Really complicated last name. I miss you so much. And on that, you might be thinking, okay, so where are the growers now? Well, like I said, I was saving the most complicated thing for last. But I'll make it short and simple. Well, I'll try to. Let's see. So they started making a position called grower techs, which was usually just a high-functioning cultivator, which would do sprays or fertilizer, chemigation, pest management. So here are the different levels of that, just renamed, and so you can see where the confusion comes from. Let's see. You could be making $13 to $15 an hour, the lower spectrum of a cultivator, or $15 to $18 an hour under the higher title of a grower tech, or whatever. Which brings us to the growers. Well, surprise, surprise, I couldn't find any actual grower positions. Now, I've seen the companies I've worked for hire so many different people and odd choices for growers. Sometimes people who don't have real credentials, or even seem to have graduated college, and then other people who just worked at the same facility when it grew tomatoes, and they knew how to run the watering systems, and then they become a grower that not only runs those systems but decides everybody's pay rate and that kind of stuff. So it really just goes all out. And then you got assistant growers, which are basically their go-tos. I've seen those last a lot longer than the actual growers, and they can make 48 to, oh, what was that, 50k? 61k? Oh, wow. Okay, so yeah, there's that. Everybody wants to be a grower, right? Cool. So, anybody having a hard time out there, or are you just trying to help somebody get through a hard time? I hope you go out there, trust yourself, trust other people, try new things, and stay old.